The village had cast its shadow over our family for 15 years, a place of whispers and half-forgotten memories. I was barely 6 when my parents fled. There's no other word for how they left, taking me away from this remote settlement nestled between ancient forests and misty valleys. My grandmother remained, a silent sentinel of family secrets until death claimed her, severing our last connection to this place. Until now, my uncle's son Talik and I share blood but grew to share more. During his university years in the city, he practically lived in our apartment, his easy laughter and forthright nature making him more brother than cousin. We stayed up trading stories, exploring the city, forming a bond that transcended our family's mysterious fractures. After graduation, he returned to his roots while I continued building my life in the urban sprawl, our paths diverging naturally. Then the wedding invitation arrived. Cream-colored cardstock with elegant lettering that seemed incongruous with my memories of that place. Father conveniently disappeared into a business trip. Mother's face hardened into stone at the mere mention of her brother's name, decades-old wounds still fresh beneath her composed exterior. "I want to stop you," she said, not meeting my eyes. "But some places are better left in the past." Something in her voice made me hesitate, but how could I refuse Talik? The cousin who had become my friend deserved my presence on his most important day. Besides, a small voice whispered, perhaps it was time to confront whatever ghosts had chased my parents away all those years ago. The journey back felt like traveling through time rather than distance. Modern highways gradually surrendered to neglected rural roads, civilization receding in my rearview mirror. Rain began falling, fat droplets spattering against my windshield like nature itself wanted to obscure my path. Though I was born here, spent my earliest years running through these fields, all tangible memories had faded. What remained was more sensation than recollection, an inexplicable unease that intensified as I navigated the final winding road into the village. Reality proved even more dismal than anticipation. The settlement appeared trapped in amber, decaying slowly under perpetually gray skies. Weathered houses hunched like tired old men along muddy streets. People moved sluggishly, as if the very air had thickened around them, dragging at their limbs and spirits. The swamplands surrounding the village seemed to have infected its soul, stagnation seeping into every crack and corner. Perhaps it was merely autumn's melancholy influence, but something told me this place wore the same bleak countenance through all seasons. My uncle's house stood apart from others, deliberately isolated at the village edge. My aunt, a gaunt woman with eyes that had forgotten how to smile, regarded my car with open suspicion, as if it might transform into something dangerous at any moment. Her reluctant invitation inside carried all the warmth of a cemetery gate swinging open. Uncle Mikhail, chronologically middle-aged but physically ancient, haunted his own home like a specter. Alcohol had carved deep channels in his face and stolen the steadiness from his hands. He mumbled something unintelligible upon seeing me, neither welcome nor rejection, before shuffling away, the floorboards groaning beneath his uneven steps. Doubt crashed through me like a winter wave. What purpose did my presence serve in this house of strangers who shared my blood but nothing of my life? Then Talik burst through the door, sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "You said evening," he exclaimed, genuine delight illuminating his features as he clasped my hand in both of his. "Should have known you, beat your own schedule." His familiar warmth momentarily dispersed the house's oppressive atmosphere. We laughed together, and briefly, I remembered why I'd come. "Where should I park?" I asked, gesturing toward my mud-splattered vehicle. Something flickered across his expression, so brief I nearly missed it. "Leave it for now. Before nightfall, though, bring it closer to the house." "Any particular reason?" "Just traditional hospitality," he replied too quickly. "Are you ready to be my best man?" "Honestly, give me another day and I might reconsider," I joked, but a nervous undercurrent ran through our shared laughter. Cramped quarters meant sleeping arrangements bordered on comical. I offered to bed down in my car, but my aunt's sharp glare silenced that suggestion. She wordlessly prepared the living room sofa, a lumpy, narrow affair clearly designed for sitting rather than sleeping, while shooting glances at the darkening windows. Dinner passed in uncomfortable silence. No toasts to the upcoming nuptials, no family stories, just the clink of utensils against plates and the occasional muffled cough. Everyone retired early, leaving me alone with my thoughts in a house devoid of modern comforts, including Wi-Fi, my connection to the outside world severed as completely as if I'd stepped back in time. Sleep proved elusive on the unforgiving sofa. For an hour, I shifted positions, trying to ignore the spring digging into my back and the strange creaking noises emanating from the aging structure. Outside, the rain had stopped, but something worse had replaced it. A silence so absolute it seemed to press against the windows like a physical force. Remembering Talik's unusual instruction about the car, I decided to relocate it now rather than navigate unfamiliar territory in the morning. I extracted my keys from my bag and crept toward the door, wincing at every floorboard that betrayed my movement. Outside, darkness reigned with an intensity I'd never experienced in the city. No streetlights, no ambient glow from neighboring buildings, not even moonlight penetrated the low-hanging clouds that smothered the landscape. I pulled my jacket tightly around me, the October chill biting through layers of clothing, and started toward my vehicle. With each squelching step through mud, I realized my feet were clad in house slippers rather than proper boots. I cursed quietly but continued forward. They were already ruined, and returning would mean disturbing the house's uneasy silence. 20 yards from the car, something skittered at the periphery of my vision. A cat perhaps, or some nocturnal creature. I turned, squinting into blackness that refused to yield its secrets. Nothing visible, yet the distinct sensation of being observed prickled across my skin. I reached for the car door, key poised to unlock it, when the unmistakable sound of footsteps, light, quick, deliberate, froze me in place. Adrenaline surged through my system as I slowly turned. A small figure stood motionless in the darkness. As my eyes strained to adjust, details emerged. A girl, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, with pale hair cascading down her shoulders. Even in the darkness, I could see her thin dress was unsuitable for the cold night air. Her feet were bare, caked with mud that looked almost black in the dim light. Most disturbing was her silent weeping, shoulders trembling with suppressed sobs that barely disturbed the night air. "Hey there," I said softly, taking a cautious step toward her. "Are you lost? What are you doing out here so late?" The girl remained silent, but her crying intensified. I moved closer, medical training kicking in as I assessed her for signs of injury or distress. Her bare feet looked painfully cold against the muddy ground. "Where do you live? Where are your parents? It's not safe for you to be alone out here." The night seemed to hold its breath around us. Then, in a voice that raised gooseflesh along my arms, too hollow, too ancient for her small frame, she whispered, "Help us." The words hung in the frigid air between us, carrying a weight that seemed to press against my chest. Before I could respond, she began backing away, eyes never leaving mine. "Wait," I called. "What do you mean? Who needs help?" "Help us," she repeated, her voice growing fainter as she retreated. Then she turned and ran with surprising speed, a pale ghost disappearing into the impenetrable darkness beyond the property line. I hesitated only moments before pursuing her. Whatever had brought a child out alone on such a night, in such a state, couldn't be good. Images of accidents, abuse, or worse flashed through my mind. How could I possibly return to the warmth of the house knowing a barefoot child wandered the freezing darkness? "Wait," I called, my voice swallowed by the vast silence. "Let me help you." My slippered feet slid on the muddy earth as I followed the sound of her retreating footsteps and occasional whimpers. Rational thought warned me about the foolishness of chasing an unknown entity into darkness, but something more primitive compelled me forward, a protective instinct that overrode caution. I hadn't ventured this far from the village in daylight, let alone under cover of this smothering night. After approximately 150 yards, I realized the sounds had ceased. I stopped, breathing heavily, turning in a slow circle as panic began to build. "Where are you?" I called. "Please, I just want to help." Only silence answered. My uncle's house lights were barely visible in the distance, and before me stretched an area where trees grew increasingly dense. The silhouettes of their branches clawed at the sky like grasping fingers. A rustling sound to my right snapped my attention. Footsteps again, but different now, hesitant, almost beckoning. I moved toward them, pushing through low-hanging branches that seemed to clutch at my clothing. The small forest opened to reveal a clearing where time itself seemed suspended. There, beneath ancient trees that had witnessed generations come and go, stood a dilapidated wooden structure. Not quite a proper house, not merely a shed, something in between that defied simple categorization. Nature had begun reclaiming it. Vines and wild vegetation climbed its walls and roof, as if trying to pull it back into the earth. Even as rational thought screamed warnings in my mind, a deeper part of me recognized this place. Not from memory but from something more primordial, the universal human understanding of liminal spaces where worlds might intersect. The door hung partially open, seeming to breathe with the night breeze. From within came the sound of quiet sobbing. "It's okay," I called, striving for a confidence I didn't feel. "You can come out. I'll take you home, wherever that is. You're safe now." The sobbing stopped. The silence that followed was worse. "Helpless," came the whisper from inside. No longer a child's voice but something that contained multitudes, old and young, male and female, a chorus of need that resonated in my bones. Every instinct urged retreat, yet I found myself moving forward as if pulled by invisible threads. Whatever waited inside that decrepit structure was beyond my understanding, but the mystery of it, perhaps the same mystery that had driven my parents from this place, demanded confrontation. The door released an agonized groan as I pushed it wider, as if warning me of what lay beyond. I stepped across the threshold into darkness so complete it seemed to have substance. And in that moment, I understood that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. The entryway gaped wide, yet the darkness within remained impenetrable. Where could she be? We should depart from this location. Without warning, the entrance sealed itself behind me with a deafening impact. The sudden noise caused me to startle and stumble rearward. What occurred just now? Perhaps air movement caused it? Locating the exit became increasingly difficult in the absence of light. "Depart." The utterance was deeply disturbing, a grinding, creaking vocalization. It bore resemblance to the sound of the entrance's metal joints. I couldn't pinpoint its origin. However, it certainly wasn't emitted by a juvenile. "Identify yourself." My vocals were unfamiliar to my own ears. They had transformed into a raspy, tense sound. "Depart immediately." The auditory phenomenon now originated from my rear position. I presumably rotated my body, but the blackness was so absolute that visual impairment seemed possible. Who might occupy this space? Perhaps an unhoused individual, someone mentally unstable, or a person with malicious intent. I must extract the juvenile from these premises. The source of my boldness in making this declaration remains unclear. Yet abandoning the young female was inconceivable. "Depart." The message repeated as something frigid made contact with my lower extremity. I recoiled backward, colliding cranially with the vertical structure. What transpires in this location? What transpires in this location? Terror had already seized me completely. Additional auditory stimuli emerged from behind my position. Something laborious, rasping, possibly respiration. From my leftward periphery, a current of frigid atmosphere washed over me. Noxious, malodorous air unlike any previously encountered. This must be the scent of biological decomposition, was my thought. From the interior depths, childlike amusement sounds erupted. Subsequently, the rasping noise returned. And directly overhead, an entity vociferated, "Depart." Nearly collapsing became my reality. These events defy comprehension. Another moment might have rendered me unconscious from extreme fear. But while attempting to regain physical awareness, my appendages encountered a solid object within my outerwear pocket. My communication device. Without hesitation, I activated it expeditiously. Almost immediately, I instinctively engaged the illumination function. The obscurity momentarily resisted the brilliant radiance, then swiftly capitulated. The illumination revealed the entirety of the modest structure. I nervously anticipated what might be discovered. However, what manifested was more terrifying than expectations. The chamber was devoid of occupants or objects. Recollection fails regarding how I located the exit. Memory doesn't capture my forest evacuation. The return sprint to my vehicle remains absent from memory. But consciousness returned within that automotive sanctuary. My footwear had vanished somewhere during the ordeal. Soil covered my attire. The communication device's illumination function remained active. I automatically deactivated it. Only then did I observe that daybreak had commenced. The duration of my stationary position remained indeterminable. I exited the vehicle, immediately sensed an object beneath my foot, realizing I had applied pressure to something. Methodically, I retrieved what proved to be a printed material. It was a section from a journalistic publication. After removing some soil deposits, I discovered a monochromatic photographic image. It depicted a small female with elongated, colorless hair. She exhibited a pleasant facial expression while holding frozen dairy confection. Below appeared the article's primary text. Locate Anya, parental desperation. I rapidly processed the textual information. The juvenile had been engaged in recreational activity in the outdoor space. Her maternal figure hadn't observed her departure direction. Missing. 7 days of search efforts yielded no results. No evidence discovered. Law enforcement couldn't establish potential perpetrators. My visual field darkened. Supporting myself against the vehicle's interior became necessary. I manipulated my ocular organs and re-examined the image. Undoubtedly the same juvenile, but surely not a spectral manifestation? Or perhaps merely a terrifying mental fabrication during sleep. But previous exposure to her photographic representation in news dissemination seemed impossible. Operating almost automatically, I exchanged garments, carefully secured soiled attire in my storage receptacle and donned appropriate footwear. Then proceeded to Talik's sleeping quarters. Awaken. Even my vocalization seemed altered. What requirement do you have? The youthful male concealed his facial features in his bedding. I stated awaken. I must display something to you. Without delay. Dima, what issue exists? He observed my facial expression, and his drowsiness dissipated instantaneously. What transpired? Within minimal temporal units he arose and attired himself. I awaited his presence beside the vehicle. Has misfortune befallen your elder relative? Or his spouse? He inquired immediately. And why does your complexion lack pigmentation? Are you familiar with this juvenile female? I presented the journalistic material. Affirmative. He exhaled and returned it. That's Anya, offspring of the Orinkov family and local resident. She vanished approximately 21 days past. No one has located her. Not in living condition. But how did this material come into your possession? Discovered it adjacent to my vehicle. You understand, we all experience emotional distress regarding that juvenile. Speculation suggests her male sibling might be responsible. He exhibits mental instability, but evidential support is absent. It's an investigation without progress. Stated Talik. How would you respond if I claimed visual contact with her yesterday? I inquired directly. Talik prepared to vocalize something, but merely observed me silently. Evidently, he suspected mental instability on my part. Honestly, that consideration held no significance at that moment. I communicated all occurrences from the previous nocturnal period. Are you certain you weren't experiencing unconscious cerebral activity? Talik inquired upon my narrative's conclusion. Certainty eludes me, but inconsistencies exist. A modest structure exists at the woodland perimeter. Affirmative, such exists, so how would I possess knowledge of it? Well, you resided here during your developmental period. Perhaps memory served you, stated Talik. Acceptable. Then let us proceed there. Let us proceed. We shall go if it provides mental tranquility. The journey there seemed significantly reduced compared to previous experience. Could I genuinely have traversed such distance at accelerated pace? In diurnal illumination, the structure appeared less menacing, but it definitely matched my recollection. I maintained position several units of measurement from the entrance, but Talik confidently entered the interior. No occupants exist here, I heard from within. Within 60 seconds he rejoined my position. You must have experienced unconscious cerebral activity. Acceptable. I reduced my elevation. But how do you explain this phenomenon? My footwear rested in the soil, and adjacent to them were diminutive impressions. The juvenile's maternal figure had been Talik's educational peer. Her marital partner was engaged in employment during the incident. She provided no novel information. The offspring had been engaged in recreational activity in the exterior sand containment. The female adult entered the interior momentarily. Upon return, the juvenile had vanished. By the conclusion of her account, lacrimal secretion was evident. I could clearly observe her inability to absolve herself for allowing her offspring beyond visual range. Assist her, assist her. I nearly elevated unexpectedly when receiving these auditory inputs. In the spatial corner on a resting platform sat a male juvenile approximately 10 or 11 temporal units. He originated these vocalizations. How might assistance be rendered? I inquired with uncertainty, but the male juvenile didn't direct visual attention toward me. He took her. He took her. He reiterates this continuously. The spouse elucidated. He has developed neurological condition since that occurrence. He consistently exhibited social withdrawal but now demonstrates increased symptoms. They struggle considerably even to feed him. And does he say nothing else? I inquired. No, he constantly repeats the same phrases. Would you like some coffee? I was just preparing breakfast. Talik began politely declining, but I interrupted him. With pleasure, I enjoy coffee. Very well. Then I'll help you, Talik said, glancing uncertainly at me. When they proceeded to the kitchen, I moved closer to the boy. Yesterday I saw your sister, I whispered, after realizing I couldn't otherwise attract his attention. This had an almost instantaneous effect. The boy looked at me intently. I want to help her, I continued, but I cannot manage alone. The boy continued studying me carefully. Nobody believes, he said. There was a black shadow, but nobody believes. I believe you. I saw Anya yesterday. I will help her. Do you know what shadow it is? Black shadow from the forest. Black shadow from the forest. The boy encircled his head with his arms, rocking his entire body forward and backward. But he no longer requested help. When she disappeared, was she wearing a white polka dot dress? I asked when the coffee had been consumed. The woman confirmed with surprise that yes, she was. Well, now I was certain that I had definitely seen her. Talik retrieved a hunting rifle from the house. He still believed I had merely dreamed everything. Moreover, I was distracting him from wedding preparations, and he wanted to be rid of me quickly. I, however, was more serious than ever before. This girl, or whatever remained of her, must be in that small house. But something else was definitely there too, and I doubted the rifle would be effective against it. However, daylight was on our side. We simply needed to examine the house. I heard voices emanating directly from the wall. Perhaps there were additional rooms. Talik entered first. There's nobody here. Yes, the house was empty. In daylight, everything appeared less frightening. But here was the wall projection against which I had struck my head. The area still ached, confirming this wasn't fabricated. I walked along the walls. What I sought remained unclear even to myself. You, re-engaging in foolishness. Talik attempted to reason with me. This place has been empty for half a century. He walked across the floor with his heavy boots, demonstrating there was nothing to fear. But the sound of his last step made me flinch. Hollowness. There must be an empty space below. I rushed quickly to that spot. Within another minute, I managed to locate where a trapdoor lay beneath a layer of dirt. I pulled, but it didn't yield on the first attempt. "Help me," I shouted to Talik. But he didn't respond. I raised my head and saw him frozen in terror. I rose to my feet and looked toward what had captured his attention. Someone stood on the opposite side. The figure resembled an elderly woman. Dark, wrinkled skin, red eyes, an almost bald head with sparse gray hairs, rotting teeth visible through a crooked smile. She wore strips of old fabric that barely covered her body. And most horrifying, the smell. That same odor I had detected the previous night. The door behind us slammed shut abruptly, and the house became extremely dark. 2 large ones will last a long time. Her voice was eerily creaking and lifeless. She began approaching us. Talik couldn't even move. I grabbed the rifle from his hands and quickly fired at her. But she didn't even stagger. At the wound site appeared some murky gray fluid. There was no blood. Within seconds, she flattened herself on the floor and began crawling toward us. The trapdoor opened by itself. Talik awakened from his stupor and rushed toward the door. I did likewise. We pulled it forcefully, but it wouldn't budge. Once, twice, nothing helped. I felt it grasp my leg and pull me backward. I collapsed onto the floor and tasted blood in my mouth. I attempted to grab onto something, but only scraped my fingers. Within a minute, I found myself dragged inside the trapdoor. I fell from a 2-meter height onto my right arm. It seemed to me that I had broken it, but this currently represented the least of my problems. I witnessed the black shadow dart back through the trapdoor into the room. It went after Talik. I urgently needed to escape from here. I hoped my friend could resist longer than I had. So, most likely, this was a cellar. Yes, there was even a broken ladder here. I had a chance to escape while the trapdoor remained open. I was already attempting to position the ladder toward the exit when something pale in the corner caught my attention. I looked carefully. It was the same girl. She appeared lifeless. I quickly lifted her into my arms. She was extremely light. This complicated the task, especially with my injured arm. Suddenly a shot rang out. Then a second. Talik was indeed resisting. This gave me additional strength. I pressed the girl against myself and with my healthy arm grabbed the ladder. A minute later, we were upstairs. The entire floor was covered in gray tears flowing from her. She writhed around Talik. One of her arms had been shot off. With the other, she gripped my friend directly by the throat. The rifle lay nearby. I seized it and with all my might struck the butt against her head. The gray substance splattered in all directions. But her arm didn't even tremble. In desperation, I swung and hit her neck. This had an effect. The head tilted sideways. The grip loosened. I pushed her aside with my foot and helped Talik rise to his feet. Then grabbed the girl in my arms and we quickly exited the house. The door yielded easily this time. We had barely stepped outside when something struck the window. It was her with her head tilted sideways, with red frenzied eyes. Another minute and she would be upon us. Talik, matches, was all I could articulate, and blocked the door. For some reason, I felt certain she couldn't exit through the window. Talik found a log nearby and quickly braced it against the door. I ignited the newspaper page I had found that morning near my car and threw it onto the straw comprising the roof, which immediately caught fire. "Take the girl and leave," I shouted, and Talik promptly obeyed. I simply needed to remain and ensure that everything would definitely burn. But the fire accomplished its task very rapidly. Within a minute, nothing remained of the wooden house. Only the smoke was excessively thick and black. The girl required hospitalization. She appeared so lifeless, as if her vitality had simply been extracted. I hope she recovers well. Not waiting for the wedding, I quickly entered my car and departed. Thank you all for watching this video. Since I recently started writing and posting my stories, I would greatly appreciate if you wrote in the comments what should be changed, what you liked or disliked. You can also suggest your own stories or simply write what kinds of stories you would like to see on my channel in the future, because what I do is for my viewers. For you. This will really help me create exactly the stories that will interest you. Also, subscribe and like. We, hear each other in the next story.